Rivalry week without some big news surrounding the Bearcats football program. We break it all down today, headlined by a new development in the quarterback battle.
Our Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen of every day. It is Thursday, September 15th. We are just 2 days away from the battle for the victory bell. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube. Subscribe to the Locked On Bearcats podcast on YouTube. My name is Alex Frank, your host each and every day, former sports director of UC's Bearcast Media. Joined today by my colleague at AllBearcats and Sports Illustrated, Russ Heltman, ahead of the Bearcats battle for the victory bell with the Miami Redhawks on Saturday. And Russ, as I mentioned at the top, we've got some big news that broke on Tuesday night on Luke Fickell's radio show. The quarterback battle, that is interesting once again. Even though Ben Bryant is the starter, Evan Prater is making things a little interesting, isn't he, Russ?
That he is. 4 for 5, 92 yards, and had that scamper for a touchdown. Looked as good, I think, as you can look, obviously with that one incompletion withstanding against an FCS opponent in Kennesaw State that was ranked in the AFCA coaches poll in the FCS coming in, although they had lost their first game of the season. And to me, that was a dominant performance and a really great, efficient performance from both quarterbacks. I think they checked both boxes in that game. When you think about Ben Bryant going, 18 of 20, for 201 yards, multiple touchdowns, really efficient day, went through his progressions well. And then Evan Prater showing off that I would say, he's got to be hovering near a 4.40. The speed on that dude is unbelievable. Went untouched, 44 yards for that touchdown on the QB run. He's a player that is not going to start, I don't think, the rest of the way here in the coming months, the coming weeks to go, unless we get an injury from Ben Bryant. But he's a guy I think you got to try to find a way to get on the field for 7 to 10 snaps a game, just with how much athleticism he possesses.
Yeah, it really was a good performance by him. And you and I were talking during the game, and you noted to me his smoothness, the smoothness in which he played. I go back, Russ, and I mentioned this on the show yesterday. I go back to his touchdown run. Actually, not even that. I'll go to his first completion, that 26-yarder to Jaden Thompson. Russ, The snap was bad. The snap was on the ground. Prater just picks it up like Tom Brady spiking the ball in Super Bowl 36, stands in the pocket, calmly fires a dart to Jaden Thompson, and then the touchdown run, Russ, he's rolling out to his left, and the color analyst on ESPN Plus said this, he could have dumped it off in the flat to, I believe, Kaman Mateer, but instead he pulled the ball down, took off, and ran. He just that smooth stride that he has in his running. It really was something to watch, and it was something I hope going into the game that we got to see. Now, Luke Fickell did say on his show Tuesday night that what this does is it's going to really challenge Evan's mentality, because he now knows he can go in there and play really well, but yet Ben Bryant's going to be the starter. But what in your eyes, Russ, does this performance do? You just mentioned it, that you hope he can get 7 to 10 plays a game. I only think that's going to happen if the game's a blowout. But Russ, what does this do? Does this make the quarterback battle? Does it kind of get those questions turning? Does that kind of maybe put that, seed in Luke Fickell's head that Evan Prater can, in fact, be this team's starting quarterback?
Well, the seed's already there, Alex. He knows that Evan Prater can be this team's starting quarterback. It was a neck-and-neck race all offseason long, all preseason camp, and it was on display. Like I said, 4 for 5 passing, 92 yards, and the 44-yard touchdown run. He knows it, and he said it on Tuesday. Quote, "We've seen it, we know it, but to go out there and do it and have the opportunity to do it is what sometimes is most difficult." And I think reading between the lines there, it's a kind of call to arms for Evan Prater to see if he can keep that sharpness, see if he can keep that mentality, keep his mental fortitude acclimated inside this season, and see if he can not only improve his play as a quarterback while not getting on the field, improve his ability to mesh with his teammates, his ability to fall in line into this UC system. And I think it's, as Cole said, going to be a good test the rest of the way to see how he deals with this. And on the other side, if he deals with things the correct way, as he has the entire offseason, the entire time he's been here, getting back to being under Desmond Ritter. He has never really voiced a vocal complaint, a public complaint. It's always been good soldier, good standing within this program. If he keeps showing that to this staff, then like I mentioned, you have to, at some point, get this guy on the field in meaningful moments, not just when Ben Bryant's helmet comes off, one of the 10 players to do so in week 1 against Arkansas.
Yeah, I counted 11 in that game. I didn't count any in the game against Kennesaw State this past weekend.
Taped it to their heads.
No kidding. I mean, no, Russ, because like I brought it up last week. What's going to happen when you're in a marquee game and Ben Bryant's helmet comes off, or God forbid, Ivan Pace's helmet comes off? What's going to happen?
Like, they go off the field for a play, and then you're at a little bit more of a disadvantage, but you hope it's not obviously that much of a disadvantage with how much depth is on this team. We're going to be getting into the depth here in just a few minutes, talking about these injuries that are starting to kind of pepper and season the roster a little bit more than you'd like early on in the season.
Yeah, it's interesting, Russ, because I feel like the last 4 years with this team under Luke Fickell, since they got really good in 2018, they have been really fortunate to have great health on this team. I mean, Desmond Ritter was dinged up for most of 2019, but outside of that, Jared Dokes, sure was injured in 2018, but really there hasn't been a significant injury to this team and to this program until this week. We found out that Malik Vann is going to miss the rest of the season. Bearcats senior defensive lineman, fifth-year senior, with a torn pec. We found out that Will Pauling, wide receiver, is going to miss a few weeks with a sprained MCL. Russ, what does this do for those two positions? Because the defensive line, we talked about it all offseason. It's a new look defensive line, despite it having some really good players. And then the wide receiver room, which is much deeper than it's been seasons past, now has taken a hit to its depth with Will Pauling going out. Russ, what did these injuries do to those two position groups?
Well, to me, it screams to a guy that you've been a big fan of, and we talked about in one pod earlier before the season started, Eric Phillips. He'll be the starter now, I would imagine, at the other end spot opposite Jabari Taylor and obviously the man in the middle, Jawan Briggs. Noah Potter got a lot more run last week than I think he was maybe anticipating against Kennesaw State early on, at least, and I would expect that to continue. The Ohio State transfer to step in there for some more snaps. Justin Weltley, also another candidate to pick up some more of the slack there. So it's going to be, I think, 3 to 4 guys that are kind of mixing in, adding about 10 to 15 more snaps to their slate than they would normally have. And then when you look at Pauling, 5th on the team in catches right now. He had a really great camp. Hopefully this doesn't put a damper and put a stake in the trajectory he was having this season and try to get him back in the next couple weeks or so from this MCL injury that Luke Fickell described on his radio show. So guys like Nick Mardner, Chris Scott, those are the two biggest candidates, and especially Mardner, who I expect to kind of start to cement his role heavier in this offense in the coming weeks. And then a guy we haven't gotten to talk about being absent, Jake Renfro, also missing extended time as well. The starting center coming into the season, and one of the leaders, definitive leaders on this team, having to have Gavin Gerhardt step in, who Ben Bryant during his media availability yesterday praised and said that it's been pretty seamless and a really impressive showing from Gavin Gerhardt to, on really short notice that week of Arkansas, be able to step in there and get that chemistry down with Ben Bryant. So they're making it work. They're shaking, they're moving, they're grooving. But at some point, a football team is like a house of cards, Alex. You and I know this best. And if you take one card out too many, the whole thing falls down.
Yeah, and hopefully, there isn't another significant injury to this team. And Jake Renfro, I forgot to mention him, but that was a development 2 weeks ago leading up to the season opener. He's out for the season. But, Russ, I think the offensive line has held up nicely in his absence, correct?
I would agree. There hasn't been a lot of issues so far in terms of Ben Bryant being under fire, being under a lot of pressure. I think less than 2-3 sacks a game so far. He has not taken a lot of pressure. And especially week 1, I was impressed with how much time they did give Bryant. And it made it a little bit more frustrating, especially in that first half with the amount of time he had, how many overthrows that he missed in that game. So obviously the trenches, you and I talked about it, were the strength of this team coming in, especially that front 7, including the linebacking core on the defensive side. And so far it's held up pretty well and played well enough to give the Bearcats an opportunity to win their first 2 games, but the other pieces have not necessarily been there, and that's why they're 1-1.
Only 3 sacks at Arkansas, which, I mean, that was a much big improvement considering what happened in the Cotton Bowl against Fedarian Mathis and Will Anderson in Alabama. And then a very solid performance on Saturday, allowing the Bearcats to accrue over 500 yards total offense. You mentioned the linebackers. We're going to go there next because, boy, did the Bearcats find a diamond in the rough, a gem in the transfer portal this offseason. The brother of an already great linebacker on this Bearcats team, but now that brother might be the best of the two. It might be the best player on the team. We'll get into it after a word from BetOnline. You see, betonline.net is your number one source for all of your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. So, if you want to take the Bearcats minus 20.5 this week, you can. Find all of the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this year's opening week's games. BetOnline is also your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Russ, I'm watching the film of the Kennesaw State game on Tuesday, and oh my goodness, Ivan Pace Jr. Are you kidding me with his first 2 games, Russ? 23 sacks, 4.5 tackles for loss, a forced fumble. I mean, this guy is doing it all right now. I mean, what is the ceiling for this kid, this Cincinnati kid, transferring from Miami? He's got to be, chomping at the bit to play this week against his former school. I mean, what is this guy's ceiling?
I think, and you talked about it yesterday on the show on Wednesday, the fact that he is a definitive American Athletic Conference Defensive Player of the Year candidate, and I would argue right up there in the running for All-American status. That is how well he is playing right now. Top 20 nationally in total tackles, tied for 16th with 23. Tackles for loss, tied for 9th with 4.5. He's forced a fumble, obviously, on that great read I think that was in the first half. I'm sure it may have been early in the second half when he deflected
about the one
a pitch.
That Taylor recovered?
Yeah, was that second half? Was that the second half?
Yeah, that was the second play of the second half on that first drive.
There you go. Okay. But just a really great instincts. I mean, you and I both rewatched it. The fact that he was able to get back into the backfield, his speed at 6 foot, 235 pounds, it's like a rocket firing off the line every single time. And that's the only reason I think he's not in the NFL right now, is that height and that weight. Tack on maybe 10 more pounds, and if he was 2-3 inches taller, he would already have been drafted out of the Miami of Ohio after last year's stellar pass rushing performance, one of the best pass rushing linebackers in the country. He's showed to be one of the best run stopping linebackers in the country so far this year. I mean, the guy, Alex, has had as monumentous of a jump in this program as you can have, coming in as a transfer, not even being afforded the number 0 option early on in his career, and he earns it throughout spring football, earns it throughout fall camp, was projected to be a reserve at the start of spring camp, and now he is a full-blown starter. And you could argue, I would make the argument right now, he is the best player on this defense.
Yeah, I mean, it's truly amazing just how good he is. It's truly amazing how good this linebacking core is.
Yeah, like Jaheim Thomas hit an amazing game on. They haven't even needed production out of Deshaun Pace, really. The results of the games would have been the same given Deshaun Pace's output the first 2.
It doesn't hurt that he added a blocked field goal, though, on Saturday. That really kind of got the Bearcats going after some pregame jitters. I mean, I look stupid now not putting Ivan Pace, in my 3 stars of the game. I mean, because every single week I think this is what you're going to get. Now, overall, defensively, Russ, once again, a stellar performance against a team who likes to run the triple option offense. 61 carries for Kennesaw State, 142 rushing yards. Russ, because I get the sense that this program prides itself on stopping the triple option when they play. Is that what you're sensing from this program?
No doubt. And what was the streak they ended? 73 straight games or whatever, 150 plus yards.
Going back to October of 2015.
Yep, a 7-year streak that they ended. And you and I were texting about it during the game, and we said this would probably be the most impressive part of this game if they're able to shut down this streak. And an offense that is entirely relied upon their quarterback, Xavier Shepard, to get the work done. He looked really shaky. It didn't even seem like they trusted him after having him pull off a career high and program high of all time, a program record-breaking 35 carries the week before. He didn't even touch the ball 15 times against the Bearcats. Just goes to show how well they keyed in on him. He was the number one topic in terms of what to look for when the Eagles get on the field offensively in my preview that the Bearcats had to stop, and they did a fantastic job. I would expect to see a similar type of performance against Navy later on in the season. The midshipmen really down once again. They just do not have the quarterback talent and guys like, and they don't have anybody that compares to a guy like Nkosi Perry or whoever, I forget who, Malcolm Perry. He's not Nkosi Perry. He's at FAU.
Yeah.
But Malcolm Perry, he was fantastic running that offense, and you have to have that linchpin dual threat quarterback to be able to make it work. The midshipmen do not, and the Bearcats have great scout team willing players that are definitely able to buy in throughout that week, commit themselves to playing the triple option so that their first team defense can get the best look possible. And that's what happened last week.
Yeah. That's something that has been well documented. When the Bearcats prepare for a triple option, I remember in 2018, the scout team was a big part of the preparation. They held Navy to just 124 rushing yards. And then you look at what they did. And Russ, this is what really stands out to me. 2 years ago, this program plays Army. That game was scheduled, I think, 2 or 3 weeks in advance. Russ, they made Army throw the ball 20 times in that game. You don't see Army, Navy, and Air Force throw the ball 20 times in a game. So maybe not even 20 times in a season, let alone one game.
It's all about stopping that dive. And the dive, what did it average? Like 1 yard a carry, if that, against the Kennesaw State Owls. I didn't see one fullback dive, which is what the entire triple option is predicated on, go for more than 3 yards. It was that impressive.
Every time I saw the Kennesaw State try to run, there were multiple Bearcat defensive players swarming to the ball. I mean, swarming to the ball, Russ. It was about as good of a performance against that offense as this program has had. So does this, because I know a lot of fans, it's hard to get up for a game against an FCS opponent because there's not a lot of excitement as there was, leading up to the Arkansas game. But Russ, this game to me, I'm watching it and the commentators were talking about it. It serves as a good, I think, how do I want to say this? A preparation game for when you do face Navy. And sometimes when you play a team like Kennesaw State, you can use that as practice for when you face a team in your own conference in Navy that, let's be honest, gave the Bearcats some problems last year with that triple option.
Yeah, they did. And honestly, maybe they have some problems with Navy this year with Labatai coming back, but the guy still, once again, under 50% completion this year to start the season. You see a 97.6% ESPN FPI favorite in that game. I would project him to be maybe a 24-point favorite as long as things keep going on the trajectory they are for each program over the next 6 weeks or so before they face off on November 5th. I don't expect him to have any trouble with Navy. And to me, Kennesaw State is a B version of what Navy is going to give you. And the A version should not be enough to close that 24, 21 point gap spread that I expect to see during that week in the opening month or in the opening few days of November.
Yeah. And I just think, Navy's not till November 5th.
Yeah.
But again, this game, once again, you saw the pride of this program, which, let's be honest, it's driven through the offensive and defensive lines. But they still have the pride and the commitment to stop the triple option. Once the Bearcats got run over by Navy, I remember this game vividly. 2017. Russ, they gave up almost 600 yards of rushing. That never leaves a defensive-minded head coach in Luke Fickell, right?
No, it does not. And I'm sure Luke Fickell took a lot of lessons from those 8 losses back in 2017 that have obviously proved to bear great fruit over the ensuing 4 years since. So it was, I think what Saturday proved to me is that this team is not willing to let a snowball become an avalanche in terms of negative results. They are a team that's going to come out. They're going to answer the bell the next day in practice. They're going to realize what they did wrong on tape, and they're going to be able to fix it. And that goes from the coaching staff all the way down to the scout team. And that's the biggest thing I've seen with this program. It's a complete 90-plus man operation out here that is just going to obliterate and set records, top 10 scoring performance in program history on Saturday, if you hand them a loss for the first time in 1,000 days in the regular season and give them that much time to prepare with that many tools to prepare for that issue in terms of the scout team players, the backup safeties being able to step in as the quarterback, all that good stuff. So it's a complete program win on Saturday in that 63-10 demolishing of Kennesaw State.
I look at it as, that game speaks to the culture of the program. And I know people out there might say, well, what can you really take away from a 53-point win? But you can take away a lot from a 53-point win, Russ. You're supposed to do that. I mean, this is a program, and you and I talked about this on Saturday. This program takes care of business against bad teams. They've scored 50-plus points twice on ECU. They scored 63 on Alabama A&M. And I'm not saying Alabama A&M is a bad team. You can't really say a team like Alabama A&M or Kennesaw State's a bad team because they play at the level below the FBS. They might be really good as Kennesaw State was. And people said, oh, why are you talking them up like an SEC team? Because they have been really good over the last few years. And it was, the next game on the schedule, you're coming off a loss. Russ, this was the first time in 12 years the Bearcats started 0-1. They're not used to being in this position. But it goes back to Luke Fickell and what he said last week. Humble yourself. And the Bearcats maybe didn't really need to do that, but Russ, they did. They did because they have not been in this position in a long time. And they passed the test with flying colors. Now they're back on the winning track, and now you really start to think they can win out the rest of their regular season games.
No doubt. I mean, they're going to be favored in every game the rest of the way, save for the back end of that away stretch against SMU and UCF. I think they might be slight 1.2-point underdogs in that October 29th trip down to Florida to take on the Golden Knights. But other than that, they should be favored the rest of the way. Analytically, the models have them across the board as a top 20 team, upwards of wealth, which is the high mark from S&P Plus, Bill Connolly's algorithm that he runs every single week. Massey has them 17th. Sagarin rating has them 18th. ESPN FPI has them 19th. And the biggest reason I believe they're in the teens right now and outside of the rankings and the coaches poll and the AP poll is because they were already a top 20 team going into Arkansas. They barely lose off of a lot of blown opportunity, and then they come out and do exactly what a top 20 team should do against an FCS opponent, blow the doors off them. And analytically, when you go through the history of football results, whether it's NFL, college, or high school, when you beat a team much lower in talent level than you by 50-plus points, you destroy them further or you beat them worse than the analytics models even predict. That's just as good of an indication of how good a team you are as when you barely beat a team rated similar as you. So to me, it's just a standing and a thing and a marker with that 63-10 defeat that UC is still here. They're still ready to make noise, even though the college football playoff is off the table.
And in a wild week of college football, the Bearcats just did what they needed to do. And by the way, let's just throw this out there. The Bearcats still have a better record than that team in South Bend, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
Man, tough times. I mean, to start 0-2, you lose to Ohio State. That was expected, but to Marshall,
fine.
and then you lose Shane Buechele for the entire season, sprained AC joint, out 4 months. Yeah, tough sledding for a former very influential key piece of this Bearcats program, Marcus Freeman, the head coach at ND.
I do feel for him. I really do. I want him to succeed there. I think he will, but I mean, you talk about the Bearcats being in uncharted territory, losing their first game for the first time in 12 years. Notre Dame 0-2 for the first time in 11 years. But they did finish that season 8-4, so there is hope for this season. After a word from two of our sponsors, we'll get into what is coming up on Saturday, the battle for the victory bell, a very historical anecdote coming into the matchup this weekend. Plus, Russ, I'm going to ask you about some questionable comments made by Miami's head coach. It might add a little fuel to the fire in this game. Plus, I'm going to make you relive the roller coaster of emotions from Sunday. And you know where I'm going with this. We'll get into it after a word from two of our sponsors. Russ's reaction was priceless just now. Roller coaster of emotions. Maybe we can just get it out of the way. Because
let's do it.
As encouraged as I am by Sunday's game, and as I still think the Bengals are winning the AFC North because I'm not buying into Baltimore. I'm not buying into Pittsburgh. Cleveland did impress me a little bit, but Russ, my goodness, can you explain what we witnessed on Sunday and what you're thinking as we're on Thursdays. We're 3 days away from the game in Dallas. I mean, what are you thinking?
23-20, just brutal. I said it was the second most frustrating loss of my Bengals lifetime outside of the Super Bowl. And those just happened to be the last two games coached by one Zach Taylor, who was a B- in the first half and then put up a big old F in the second half in overtime, while his quarterback put up an F in the first half and had a B+ to A- performance in the second half and overtime. That will hand you a 23-20 loss at the hands of 198 yards on 37 pass attempts from Mitch Trubisky. The team in the Steelers had the worst down conversion rate on a fresh set of downs of any team in the NFL. They could barely move the football. I think they won the game with 13 first downs. And the bottom line is, I said this on Twitter today, 53 games in to the Zach Taylor experience, and this man still does not know how to call a sound, unpredictable offensive game plan. It's amazing. When you're under center, guess what the Bengals are doing? They're running the football 89% of the time, and they're going to be most likely running wide zone, which they did 70% of the time on those 89% run looks. And when the Bengals are in shotgun, guess what they're doing 80% of the time? They are throwing the ball. It's not rocket science, although our guy Matt Patricia and the New England Patriots are trying to make it rocket science over there in Boston. It's just, I have to take a pause and just not curse on the show, because to have the thoroughbreds and the offensive weapons that the Bengals have, and to make it as predictable as Zach Taylor makes it every single week, it makes me really question, why is Joe Burrow capes for this man so hard? And to me, if he doesn't figure it out, it is 1 week. I will cut him some slack. Maybe they start to go more unpredictable. Maybe they start to change up the tendencies a little bit. But they had a whole summer to do so. What did they do all summer? What did they do in these game plan meetings? What did they chart all season? Did they not look at the tendencies? It's just so infuriating, and I'll give them a couple more chances to figure it out. But at some point, if you're Mike Brown, having already extended Zach Taylor right after the Super Bowl season, which justifiably, you're not going to have him go into this year on a lame duck contract. That's just not what they do in the NFL. But if he's terrible the rest of the way, the Bengals miss the playoffs. If the Bengals lose to Cooper Rush on Sunday and essentially give themselves the 12% death knell, that is 0-2 teams trying to make the playoffs in the NFL, especially in this AFC conference, then you go out and you throw the entire kitchen sink at Sean Payton. You do that as hard as you can in the offseason, because Joe Burrow in this offensive weapon system for 1 more year, they get to have this group of weapons, cannot keep getting wasted. And it was wasted on Sunday. I will knock on wood. I will say they can turn it around. You're facing 3 backup level quarterbacks going into the first week of October. If they are not 3-1 after the month of September, or at least 2-2, then there's just obviously real issues, and it's not with the talent on this team.
They got to be 3-1.
They have to be.
I mean, they have to be.
It's crazy. Just absolutely crazy. That was so infuriating on Sunday.
You mentioned Sean Payton. That's a clip. If only our buddy James Rapine, our colleague at AllBearcats.
Hey, Sean Payton, what do you think about that, Alex? I mean, that's what I've been percolating in my brain the past couple of days.
I love it. You know, it's one game.
Exactly. Yeah.
Were they prepared? No. Then again, they could have won.
Right.
I mean, that speaks to Joe Burrow, though.
Right. That speaks to Joe. This is what I'm saying. Joe Burrow is winning in spite of his coaching staff, and that's the most frustrating part.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, if you need any evidence, I mean, look at the second to last drive of the first half in Tennessee last year in the playoffs. I mean, his headset went out. Joe Burrow called the plays himself, and look what that got him, 3 points. The game was decided by 3 points. So there you go. Bengals and Cowboys this Sunday. Let's get back to, there's another big game on Saturday, Russ. I mean, big weekend in Cincinnati. You going to Oktoberfest after the game on Saturday?
I think I'm going to. I'll already be parked right there. I got my pass ready to roll, and it's literally right in front of the Bengals stadium. So Oktoberfest Cincinnati. I'm excited. I've lived here my whole life, save for 6 years in college and then working in Toledo for a couple. And I have not been to an Oktoberfest. I am very excited. Should be a fun weekend.
Okay. Well, hopefully things get started off the right way. The Bearcats taking on Miami, Ohio. Russ, a chance for the Bearcats to take the series lead. The series lead. And I think when I think about that, Russ, because that's fascinating to me, but it just shows how far this Bearcats program has come under Luke Fickell and really over the last 15 years. What would it mean to have the series lead in the battle for the victory bell?
It would mean everything. This is one of the most storied rivalries in all of college football. I believe it's tied at 59, 59, and 7 as we sit here today. So when you think about the impact this will have on the overall record books and the fact that the series has not been led by UC since 1915, think about that.
1915.
1915? It's crazy. This is the
The
126th
NFL wasn't
rendition.
around then.
Right. There was no NFL. The Acme Packing Company. I don't even know if that was around with the Green Bay Packers. But the battle for the victory bell on Saturday will be the 126th meeting between these two teams. 15 straight wins in a rivalry dating back to 1888, the second oldest FBS rivalry, and it is among the top 5 most played matchups in college football history. That courtesy of great SD over at UC, Zach Stipe.
Yes.
It's all on the line.
Very good.
I mean, this is a massive, massive thing. One of the funnier parts of yesterday's media availability for Arquan Bush and Luke Fickell was Luke said that he ingrained in fall camp and made sure all the players knew that this game was to break the tie. And then the first question Arquan Bush gets asked about breaking the tie and whether he knows that, like whether or not Luke Fickell has told them whether they know the team that the tie can get broken on Saturday. He said, "No, I don't think so. I've never heard anything about that." But yeah, it's pretty cool. I just thought that was kind of funny. Maybe Arquan wasn't quite paying attention when
No.
Coach Fickell was proclaiming that they could take the lead.
He's thinking about how he's gonna, have 2 interceptions on Saturday. Let's be honest, Russ.
Right.
And that's what I love about Luke Fickell. And this goes back to, emphasizing the triple option when they face Navy. It's, he's going to focus on the next game. But damn it, there are games that he's thinking about long before they're even played. And when you wonder why the Bearcats win those games, it's because they put an extra emphasis on that, and there is nothing wrong with doing so, Russ. I mean, case in point, the Steelers went all in the preseason to get ready for the Bengals. And guess what? They walked out of Paycor Stadium with a win. Congratulations. So you can take it one game at a time, but there are games that matter, like this one. Russ.
No, it matters greatly. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Your keys to the game on Saturday.
What kind of quarterback play are we going to get from Miami, and how does the Bearcats secondary react? Avon Smith, the leading passer right now with 168 yards. Brett Gabbert, the entrenched starter for the last few years, right behind him with 166 yards. It's very intriguing to me that we could
One
get
of them is hurt, though.
Yeah, Gabbert's hurt, right? Yeah, so he's not going to play.
Dan mentioned that on Tuesday on Luke Fickell's
Yeah, so Avon Smith is going to be the starter, and how do they react to a backup quarterback playing in this game? Not really great numbers so far. 62% completion, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, about 6.5 yards per attempt. Pretty run-of-the-mill statistics. And to me, can you shut down the connection between Avion Smith and Mac Hippenhammer, who is really the entire receiving core for this team right now? Has almost double the receptions of any other player, 137 yards, averaging 12.5 yards per catch, and has 2 of their 3 receiving touchdowns on the year. And then the other side of the ball, Ryan McWood, can they take him out of the game in the rushing attack? Leads the team with 18 tackles, also has an interception to his name this season, and has a half sack to boot. So those 3 players, especially the receiver and in Mac Hippenhammer and Ryan McWood, if they can make those guys null and void, then at this point, like, they should win this game going away. I don't think they're going to have any trouble winning the game, even if those guys go off. And that might just determine if they can handle those guys, whether or not they cover and win by 3 touchdowns and cover that bet online spread.
Miami is 1-1. They won last week against Robert Morris. They lost to Kentucky in week 1. I mean, and they held their own against Kentucky in that game. Dan said if you look beyond the score, the box score in that game was pretty close. But the big stat to know is Miami has not won a game in this rivalry since 2005. I mean, that goes back a long way. So the Bearcats win. Of course, they have the series lead. forget what I was gonna ask. We got our keys to the game. I feel like there's something. I feel like there was something else we needed to talk about with this game, Russ.
Coach Martin, he had some interesting comments.
Yes, thank you. How can I forget about that? Yeah, what did you make about Chuck Martin's comments? Because I listened to them. He praised the Wazoos out of Ivan Pace. That's fine. But then with Ben Bryant, like I listened to those and I go, first of all, he's talking in circles. Second of all, they weren't really that respectful. Like, what did you make of them?
I mean, it's typical coach speak to me. I don't think it's too much to read into. Maybe you could use it as bulletin board material, and people can go look up the full press conference. I think it's available. It should be available on Miami Redhawks YouTube page. But I don't know. Like, yeah, I honestly, Ben Bryant, what has he shown so far in his college career to make you think that he is a guy that should be feared, should be ultimately massively respected? He's still trying to prove himself. He was okay in the Mid-American Conference last year, but other than that, it was kind of run-of-the-mill stuff, typical kind of college quarterback statistics, college quarterback run-of-the-mill production. And now he has a chance with all of the added horsepower in the UC offensive attack to really show Chuck Martin what he's made of in this matchup.
Yeah.
And they did match up last year. I'm going to go ahead and find the exact numbers on that while you retort that. But Ben Bryant, I think, is a player who has something to prove, and he's going to keep proving it throughout the season.
Yeah, they did match up last year, Miami and Eastern Michigan. Of course, last year, these two teams matched up in the season opener. Russ, that game was over in the first quarter. You and I both remember that game well. Score prediction for Saturday.
I'm going to roll 35-13 Bearcats barely cover in this contest, and they get the job done. I think we get a little bit of Evan Prater as well at the end of this contest, maybe a couple drives in the fourth quarter. I think it's going to be that good of a performance from the Bearcats, and they should get the job done. Going back to that first time that Ben Bryant faced Chuck Martin's team, Eastern Michigan got the job done 13-12.
Yep.
And Ben Bryant threw a touchdown, one interception, was 21 of 31 for 206 yards, kind of his average performance in the 2021 season. And that's a very average stat line. Funny enough, you want to take a guess who intercepted Ben Bryant last season?
I was just going to go there. Some guy named Ivan Pace Jr.
How about that? His only interception of the 2021 season at that.
Well, now they'll take care of Miami themselves. Speaking of trivia, you could win a bar bet with this. Russ, the last time the Bearcats had the series lead in the battle for the victory bell was 1915. Who was the U.S. president at the time?
It was Wilson, right? Woodrow Wilson?
Yes. There you go.
Ding, ding. I know my presidents, Alex. Come on.
Okay. I mean, I've made plenty of references to Richard Nixon on this podcast, so okay. I think
there's only a few Nixon references you want to make. Don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole.
I'm not. No, I don't show my political affiliation. Spoiler alert: I don't have one because this is a sports podcast. Sports unite people, so I don't get into that stuff. But I'm just going to throw a bar bet trivia question out there. Bearcats and Redhawks Saturday at noon. Russ, you said you're going to the game. You will be covering the game for All Bearcats. You can follow Russ's coverage. I need to write some stuff this week for All Bearcats. See, Russ, I traveled last week, and I need to get back into it. So 3 stars of the game is on me. Matchups of the game, I'll try to get to that. We'll have some fun this week before a very key non-conference game next week. Again, Power 5 against the Indiana Hoosiers.
That it is. Should be a really great end to the non-conference stretch, and then it's time to go pursue championship number 3 in a row.
That's true. And it's looking likely that can happen. I mean, Houston lost to Texas Tech, which, it's nothing to sneeze at, but UCF losing to Louisville? Yeah.
As 7-point favorites, too, weren't they? They were like a touchdown favorite in that game. UCF was. Yeah.
That is another problem. And Russ, I'm thinking about all the college football last week. Appalachian State goes into Texas A&M and wins. Marshall goes into Notre Dame and wins. Oklahoma's only up 7-3 at the half against Kent State. And then Kentucky beats Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way,
if Texas had beat Alabama, then UC fans would have been feeling a lot sadder, even despite a 63-10 win over Kennesaw State, because that would have opened the door for a Cinderella to maybe make a charge into the college football playoff had Georgia ended up giving Alabama their second loss in the SEC title game down the line here.
I'm convinced, though, that Georgia's going to not only beat Alabama in the SEC championship, I think they're going to wipe the floor clean against them.
It's possible. Alabama does not have that receiving talent that they have come to expect over the past 3 to 4 years.
You're very right about that. Follow Russ Heltman on Twitter at RussHeltman11. He's a producer and host at WMKV 89.3. He writes for All Bearcats. He writes for All Bengals, and he is now a endorser for Sean Payton to be the head coach of the Bengals. Asterisk if Zach Taylor can get it turned around. But I don't mean to burst your bubble, Russ, but Zach Taylor got a contract extension this offseason, so even if the Bengals do miss the playoffs, they're not going after Sean Payton. Unless Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase want him, which if that's the case,
even then, they're going to be old Mike Brown's going to tell Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, if you guys are willing to give up the amount I have to pay Zach Taylor the next 3 years after I fire him, then sure. But I don't think he's buying out Zach Taylor after year 1.
I don't think so either. Russ Heltman of All Bearcats, always good to talk to you. Enjoy the game on Saturday. You'll be there. I'll be here in Macon, Georgia watching the game, but we will have coverage for you here on Locked On Bearcats. Game preview tomorrow. My keys to the game, where I think this matchup will be decided, and my score prediction, which I am 2 for 2 so far this season. Russ, always good to talk to you. Best wishes to you, and enjoy the game on Saturday, and enjoy your first trip to Oktoberfest.
Of course, yeah. It should be a lot of fun on Saturday. Really enjoy coming on the show, Alex. Let's do it again soon.
Absolutely. We'll do it again. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. Locked On Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. How about for your second listen, make it Locked On Big 12. You can get more on the conference by making it your second listen. Everyday host Josh Neighbors and the local experts of Locked On take you across the conference in 30 minutes. Locked On Big 12, your second listen. That's Locked On Big 12. For the Locked On Bearcats podcast, I'm Alex Frank. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy Thursday Night Football tonight on Amazon Prime Video, a dandy. Chargers, Chiefs, first primetime matchup in the AFC West this season. It is going to be a fantastic game. I have a feeling about that. We'll be back tomorrow. Game preview, the battle for the victory bell. The 126th battle for the victory bell should be a lot of fun. For Locked On Bearcats, I'm Alex Frank. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you all tomorrow.